I'm Ekwo, and this is Outbound, a podcast by EF Education First that showcases transformative travel stories that defy our expectations, challenge our assumptions, and teach us something new about the world and ourselves. Today on Outbound, we present a key chapter in the story of two women who fell in love with each other because of their mutual commitment to adventure and the value of seeking growth through challenge. We'll hear the account of how these two intrepid souls sought to cement their bond by traveling on their honeymoon to a place that would seem to be, at least by reputation, one of the least accommodating of places for a gay couple to celebrate their love: Iran.
If you're a gay man, you get killed, and if you're
it's the law. It's not. Yeah, like it's
you don't just randomly get killed. It's the law, and then gay women get jailed for a year.
This is Alice and Helene reflecting on their understanding of how homosexuality is punished in Iran. But before we dive into the details of their uniquely daring honeymoon, we're going to share a few of the adventures that defined their courtship. We'll start with a very important day in Alice and Helene's romance. The day that Helene decided that she was ready to propose to Alice, and that the proposal needed to happen immediately.
We both wanted to propose to each other, but we're type A, very competitive, and so we both wanted to do it first. And so I was guessing that I'd be ready around Christmas of a certain year, and so I thought I'd be ready around October, so I told her Christmas to throw her off the scent so that I could propose first. But in any case, that summer, I was sitting outside of work talking to a friend, and the friend asked me, what are you waiting for to get engaged? And I said, well, I'm waiting to feel a certain way, which is basically to put Alice's needs before mine without even thinking about it automatically. And as I was telling her that, I thought, oh my gosh, actually in the past couple of weeks, I've absolutely been at that point, and I can point to events where that absolutely happened. And I looked at my friend and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm ready to be engaged. And she said, well, it's too bad you didn't think of it earlier since it's Alice's 30th birthday today. And I thought, oh my God, I'm getting engaged today. This is happening. And so I ran upstairs and I called her mother and asked for permission. And her mother's more conservative, so she had initially been, not super thrilled about Alice being gay, but had certainly come around and was so excited she just couldn't stop giggling. So then I called a jeweler who we had visited a couple of days before, just poking around to see what kind of styles we each liked. And we'd found a ring that Alice really liked. And so I said, hey, it's this girl. He said, great. I said, I want to get this ring. He said, awesome. And I said, well, I'm going to need it in 2 hours because we're getting on a flight for California tonight to go back to Alice's family for her birthday. And he's like, no, you're not doing it. And I was like, yeah, no, I really am. He said, all right. So we, talked for a while, and he finally agrees to get the ring ready in time. Call my parents, get packed, get ready to go. And the plan is to pick up the ring in the taxi on the way to the airport to meet Alice to fly to California to see her family for her birthday. And on the taxi, as I'm on my way there and stuck in traffic, already stressing about being late, I realized that I left my checkbook at the office, and my debit card had been canceled because of fraud while I was traveling the week before, and my credit card had a limit, which was basically maxed out because of work expenses. So I called the credit card and I said, pay it off. I have the money, but I need, access. He said, well, we'll pay it, but it won't post until tomorrow no matter what. And so I had zero cash and I needed, a ring. But I thought, well, if I go back now, then I'm gonna miss my flight. So I thought I just have to wing it. So I stayed in the taxi, went to the ring shop. I showed up, I'm all excited, he's all excited, everybody's all excited until I tell him I have no money and I need a diamond ring, and I need it now. And so 15 minutes later, after a lot of back and forth, I actually walk out with a diamond ring and zero money down and the promise to come back a week later and pay him. Get to the airport, I'm sweating through my clothes because I'm so stressed. Alice's mom had asked me when I told her, how are you gonna propose? She had said, are you gonna do it on the plane? Because Alice and I travel so much and it's a theme of our relationship. And I was like, oh, yeah, great idea. But I had no plan. And so I was Googling how to propose on a plane, and all the ideas on the internet were really lame. So get on the plane takes off, and I run to the back of the plane to the flight attendants, and I basically was waiting for them for ideas. And I said, I've got the ring, my girlfriend's on the plane, I want to propose. And they're super excited, long nails, big hair, lots of makeup, OMG, OMG, they walk me through some ideas and we come up with a plan together. And then they call the flight attendants at the front of the plane using the internal radio to let them know what's going to be happening, and that I'm going to be up there at some point in the flight. And they're equally as excited, young, super enthusiastic, OMG, OMG. The pilot overhears on the internal radio, and so he pipes in and says,
"Wait, hold on. I need to be involved. How can I help?"
And so that was kind of exciting. So we figure out a role for him, go back, sit down. Luckily for me, Alice is working against a tight deadline at work, so she's completely unaware of what's happening. An hour later, after the beverage service, I go to the front of the plane where they have, kind of the food and beverage service area. And I'm talking to the flight attendants, and they're trying to get me to calm down, so they pour me a little whiskey on the rocks, and they're like, just breathe, it's gonna be okay. And I talk to the pilot on the internal radio, and I'm telling him the speech that I want him to make. He's writing that down. They turn off the lights, and the captain comes on the PA system to the whole plane, and he said,
"This is your Captain Jim speaking. Tonight is the Perseid meteor shower, and I'm really sad that we're missing it. So I'd like you all to recreate the shooting stars by turning on your call lights."
So everybody presses the little blue lights up above them, and so it's just like, as everybody turns on these little blue lights, so it looks like the stars all up above. And he says,
"Can I call Alice Lynn to the front of the plane?"
So she comes up, and she's like, you're thinking I was making a big deal for your birthday, right? Or
Yeah, I thought it was like a birthday gift because she had told me she was not close to ready, and so I wasn't gonna pressure her, and even though I had been looking at rings already.
So she comes up and kind of stops halfway up the cabin in shock, and then I step out from where I'm hiding, and I'm on the PA system to the whole plane. And I said, Alice, about 2 years ago, we were watching the Perseids meteor shower on your birthday. We had just gotten together, and you were trying to convince me to be in a relationship with you. But I was looking at the stars and thinking how big the world was, and that I was so young, and there's so many adventures left to live in this great big world, and that I was too young to commit so early. But in the past 2 years, we've been to 10 different countries. We've traveled all over the world, and I know that life with you is going to be more and more and more adventures. So will you marry me? And the whole plane just kind of went wild. The captain came on the PA system of the whole plane. He said,
Wait. I can't see. Can someone please tell me, did she say yes?
Then I lost it. She lost it. She never even said yes because she was too much in shock.
I said nothing for an hour because I was in such shock.
And the flight attendant said, she said yes. And everybody cheered. And they actually played our song on the PA system, which was really cute.
A few people came up to us congratulating us, and there was one woman who was Israeli, and it was actually during the Israeli pride parade with the knife stabbings and all that happened, and she said this is incredible that two women could express their love like this in public when other unfortunate things are happening around the world.
The goal with the public proposal was just to get more awareness. Even if somebody is different than you, they look the same, they live the same, they're the same families. We're not any different just because we're two women that happen to love each other. Our love story looks the same and our proposal looks the same. We have chosen to just be very out always. That really matters to us.
Helene and Alice's belief in the importance of being open about their love is an important detail to keep in mind for this story. This value will be challenged when they contend with a culture that defines a stark difference between public life and private life. Another value they share is a belief in the importance of travel way off the beaten path.
2 weeks of us meeting, we knew we would probably want to get married. At least I told Alice, which was a little bit creepy. But I think part of knowing that quickly was just knowing how open she was to all kinds of adventures.
I think one of the reasons why we both really started falling in love with each other is because we do like to challenge ourselves and continue pushing those boundaries. And the fact that we can do it together. When Helene proposed to me, one of the things that she emphasized so much was that she wants to continue having adventures together for the rest of our lives. And I know we'll continue to do that. But one of our first adventures was on that Icelandic trip because one of their delicacies is the fermented shark. And so our host father brings it out in this aluminum...
Nice word for rotten shark.
It's like rotten shark, essentially, in this aluminum foil wrap, and he brings it to the dinner table and it's like, oh, do you want to try something, a specialty? Opens it up, and it smells very strong.
Acidic,
yeah, very
like make your
acidic,
skin
very
crawl,
acidic.
kind of like very narrow, sharp smell.
Helene was worried what I might think because we hadn't had anything crazy together to eat at that time. No. But I immediately just grabbed it and popped it in my mouth before she even did.
Because I remember I was psyching myself up because I was like, all right, Alice probably isn't gonna have any. Like, I gotta be like the person to like take one for the team and try this so we don't offend our host. So I'm like mentally psyching myself up and feeling really good about myself because I'm gonna be the savior. And then Alice just reaches over and just starts eating it. It's like, damn.
Yeah, I don't think I will eat it again, but I'm glad that I
was very impressed.
tried it.
sour, mushy, hard, all at the same time.
Yeah, and then you chase it with this Icelandic liquor.
Like juniper berry liquor. Yeah.
So, but they eat it like candy.
Helene and Alice's next trip was to ride the Trans-Siberian Railroad. On that trip, the couple covered a vast area of Eurasia and stayed with host families of all types. This was the first time that they both consciously hid their sexuality because of cultural differences in the places they were visiting.
The moment when I realized 100% that I wanted to marry Alice was after we did that Trans-Siberian and we lived with all those families couch surfing. So we were riding the trains with Russian people, staying in Russian host families, and we had all those challenges, and I just thought, that's exactly the partner that I want, a partner where I can have incredibly challenging adventures, but also feel like I have a sense of home with no matter where I go in the world. We are both, cross-cultural, like she's Chinese American or Taiwanese American, and I'm, French/German American. We definitely are more American than anything else, but we also have a kind of a split understanding of like what cultural identity is. And I think what we found in each other is that home is wherever we are in the culture that we built, and then home is also now kind of all over the world.
Alice and Helene tied the knot and were then left to decide where to go for their honeymoon. Alice proposed a destination that would be relaxing and fun. Helene wanted a challenge that would one-up their previous trips. So they decided to compromise. They would start in Italy but end in Iran. As their departure date approached, the anxiety started to build.
We knew it was going to be a trip that initially made us uncomfortable just because where we are in the States, there's so much negative press around Iran and hearing about so many people getting detained, and our friends and family were warning us not to go because they were worried about our safety, especially us being women, gay women, American women.
Yeah.
But we like pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone when we travel and getting to explore those new cultures and opening our minds and our hearts to different types of people.
Mm-hmm. We were pretty scared actually because everybody kept like texting us and saying, don't go. We have friends in the military who say it's so dangerous. I mean, I remember we didn't tell our parents for a long time, even, we're adults, but still, I didn't want to stress them out. Like
I didn't tell my mom till like a couple days.
Yeah. And I had an Iran tour guide book, and I remember at one point it like fell out of my bag when I was on the beach. I was like, oh crap, and I'm like, get it back in. I was paranoid my parents had seen it. Probably a month before we finally bought our airplane tickets, and I thought, oh God, here it goes, and just hit, buy, and all of a sudden I had this ticket in my inbox for Iran. I was like, oh my God. I was feeling super, super nervous. Like I've traveled in a bunch of dangerous situations and I've been in like actual physical danger before, and I know how scary that is and how when you're actually in it, like there's nothing you can do. So the big question that we had for ourselves was the passports, because American, Canadian, British citizens are actually not allowed to travel without a tour group in Iran because the Iranian government wants to keep control over them. And we obviously weren't going to be part of a tour group given our travel preferences. So we did a bunch of research. I was just kind of obsessively, I could tell you like every single person that was arrested in the past, X number of years. So none of it was casual visitors like us. Logically speaking, we had no reason to be worried. But we actually ended up, I remember when we had a layover in Istanbul, and we actually took our American passports and put them underneath the sole of Alice's sneaker.
We were just so nervous being in the US and hearing all the media reports of anti-American hostility.
When we actually arrived in Iran, Alice was pretty cool, but like my heart was pounding and I was like physically sweating because I was so stressed and scared. I was like, we're gonna get arrested, And then we got to the place where you have to fill out your, on-the-spot visa application, and they only let us fill it out halfway, and then they're like, all right, good enough. Grabbed it, stamped it, and like let us through. They could not have cared less. It was like 3 a.m, like we just went immediately to the airport hotel and crashed. But I remember we were still scared, and we were like convinced that there were infrared heat cameras that could spy on us and tell that we were like together. So we slept very, very far apart in 2 separate twin beds, just not coming near.
No, on the State Department on the U.S. State Department site, it says that they can record you in hotels.
Which is crazy.
So we were very, very nervous because we were doing something illegal by being together.
Yeah. The first real moment when we really realized we were in the country was probably when we were riding to our first host family from the airport that next morning. And you're just riding in this taxi with Iranian music, but like EDM, which was kind of interesting and we thought was awesome. And then you're just riding through these really dusty, super, super hot desert landscapes without any real idea of where you're going. And we had given the taxi driver the phone number of our host so he could find him. And we had no idea, what was going on, what was happening, but just like we're hoping that at some point we would arrive where we were going. Didn't speak the language, so we couldn't ask how far away it was. riding through the desert feeling simultaneously super excited and also lost in hoping that ride was going to end in the right place.
Literally nothing.
No, just desert. Just like hot. It was, remember how hot it was?
It was
just
very,
like
very
pouring
hot, yeah.
sweat, blinding white heat and dust. And then you would pass occasional cities and then they would be gone and then just more white hot desert. Because there's a ridge of mountains that goes through Iran and we were kind of following those. So you would see these big, dusty, low mountains, but that was it.
How long was that?
Long. 5 or 6 hours. The contrast between the desert, it's so just dry and just there's nothing growing, and then you get to the cities and it's just they literally have parks with fountains everywhere. Mm-hmm. The bazaars are kind of in these long arcades. They're covered obviously because you have to be inside because it's so hot, and there's just like super brilliantly beautiful rugs and scarves and spices. It's almost like an exaggeration of what you would expect is the actual true reality of what's there.
You know, artisans making copper pots and Persian rugs. So much color and smells. And
it's just so lush.
After their 280-mile drive south from Tehran, Helene and Alice arrive in Isfahan. Over the course of their 8-day trip, Helene and Alice cover more than 1,000 miles. In Isfahan, they meet the family of Ibrahim, the first of 2 host families that they would stay with in Iran.
And I do remember Ibrahim and his son Parsa. Parsa is like about 5. Meeting us at the side of the road, and Parsa's got that super bright smile. I mean, they're both waving. They're so excited to meet us. And then going up into their home. When you do actually get in the apartments, they're nice. They're sparse. There's not much furniture, but there's just tons of like great carpets all over. You just sit on the ground. His wife had made us tea, the first of like dozens and dozens and dozens of cups of tea that we would have with them.
Ibrahim and his family took Helene and Alice out to see the sights around Isfahan.
There's a huge culture around picnics, like everywhere. Like there's no place that's not good for a picnic. Like side of the highway, picnic. Like you just bring it all out, and everybody has their rugs that they bring with them to like sit on, like actual rugs. That first day we were in that big square.
Imam Square. And
yeah.
the Iranian culture is very much centered on the family, and so just tons of families like on their blankets in the square, eating different food and drinking tea, and we just sat down on one of the low walls around the square, and the family next to us wanted to make friends and get to know us and ask us where we're from, and they were offering us food and tea, and so we started just having this picnic with all these, with all these new people that we had just met. And our host mother wanted to show us some of the local treats, so the gaz, the sweet dessert, and so she bought a box to share with us, and then we were sharing with this family, and everyone was just making friends, and that happened throughout the entire week that we were there. Everyone was just so open to making friends and getting to know you, especially if you're from somewhere different. The Iranian kids were very curious. Yeah, and they always wanted to practice English, so it was cute when they would come up to us and ask us where we're from and then practice English.
There's a baseline amount of coverage that women need, and then there's what people will also wear if they're especially religious, and then there's what local women wear versus what tourists can get away with. So we were just trying to figure out what that line was. Our host families were so sweet. They were texting us ahead of time, trying to send us pictures so we would understand.
Yeah, because essentially you have to cover down to your wrists and your ankles, and then you have to cover your hair. But I think it's a little more loosely defined in bigger cities. But yeah, we brought a bunch of scarves to cover our hair and wear the hijab style, and then we ended up wearing I think long dresses because they had to cover your behind, and then we would wear jeans or long pants or leggings or linens. Just to make sure everything was covered.
But it was totally fine because it's so hot and so dry that it's actually not bad to be covered up, because the long clothes actually keep the sun off your body, and the scarf, to be honest, is kind of lovely. It protects your head from the sun. Mm-hmm. Covers up your hair if it's looking nappy because you haven't washed it in a while.
Helene and Alice started to question their assumptions about life in Iran as they continued to explore the area around Isfahan with Ibrahim and his family.
You hear about Iranian culture, you hear about people marching in the streets saying death to America and supporting, their very conservative government. And what we found was overwhelmingly the people that we met were not fans of their government. In general, the consensus was they wanted a much more liberal government than what they had, and that they believed that the government had amazing intentions when it started out and then had gotten corrupt like anything else. And so they themselves had a very realistic, pragmatic view of government and of power and of politics, and could speak in a very detailed way about all of their politicians, and it actually just sounded very much like how we talk about ours in some ways. Mm-hmm. I thought that was kind of interesting. And the fact that you're allowed to have dialogue about that, even. I think we thought it was much more oppressive and monitored and spied upon than it actually ended up being.
Right. There's ways that the government is oppressive, but you don't really feel that in the daily life.
We were visiting this one family, and they had prepared this amazing lunch spread for us. It was just very, very cool. And they had the TV on in the background. Do you remember this? And they had all these music videos. They were piped in from some country via like satellite TV. And it was these like super sexy music videos. And we were watching this, and and everybody just like casually having lunch next to these sexy music videos that are on this plasma screen TV.
Very scantily
clad women.
And we were shocked because we didn't think that they'd be able to be exposed to that. People get access to whatever they want to get access to.
Government can't cut off your access. People will find a way to watch music videos.
Yeah. And you're not supposed to have Facebook, but people
Everybody has
Like,
Facebook.
people find ways to get access to what they want.
Abrahim's wife threw Alice a birthday party. This would prove to be another opportunity for Helene and Alice to break down their stereotypes and get a candid look at the truth about the similarities and differences in culture between Iran and the U.S.
The host mother organized this huge surprise party for me, invited all their female family members and cousins and everything, and got this cake and made this big meal and had this dance and singing party. And it was so lovely and such a nice surprise.
All these women showed up again, like kind of all covered up, threw off those black chadors, and were just dressed like all kind of very cool fashion styles, like super open, super engaging and friendly. Everybody wanted to talk to us. And then even when they were dancing, I remember they were much better dancers than us. They were like very good at sexy dancing. Women are super covered up when they're out in the streets. So they're wearing either just the hijab, just the headscarf, or if they're more religious, the whole chador. So like, the big black sheet that they wrap all around themselves. And what's so interesting is when they're out in public, they are, very covered up in front of men that are not in their immediate family. But when they're at home, kind of all of that comes off, and you see just like this like very jovial, friendly, amazing, totally different spirit than when you see out on the street when people have to be more closed off, just kind of to not invite attention. In the media, you see these women kind of very much covered up, looking very severe, and it can feel kind of intimidating, but actually the reality is they're so warm and so open and have actually amazing fashion sense, much better than Alice and I. But what was weird for us was the switching back and forth, the public and the private, because I think when that dance party did start and everybody's doing like hip rolling, booty shaking, dancing, we didn't. First I was like, I don't know how to do this in Iran. In general, I don't, and then Iran, certainly not. And so just, they had like this big dance party where everybody's dancing in a circle to this like loud music and doing the like, I'm gonna embarrass myself if I try to make it, but that sound that women make in that culture when they're celebrating and just dancing all around and just kind of being lost in the music.
And I remember when the first couple days in the country, we did not want to take off our hijab in the house because we like still wanted to maintain that like public reserved image, but they encouraged us to like, don't wear hijab in the house, like everyone just take it off. And so after a couple days, we felt more comfortable just having that like typical Iranian private life where, you just act as you want to act, like in your own home.
As Helene and Alice explained how they came to a new appreciation for the flavor and nuances of culture in Iran, I was struck especially by this notion of public versus private life. Because at the beginning of our interview, Helene and Alice explained that being public about their love was important to them. So I asked them if they could imagine living in Iran long term.
One thing that's different about the U.S. is it's kind of public and private life are very much the same thing. Straight on the outside, gay at home or whatever, I think would be really hard for us. I can't imagine.
Yeah. It's interesting because on the Trans-Siberian, we weren't like married or engaged, and we didn't tell people that we were together, and that was already challenging in and of itself. But I think because we were just recently married and wanted to celebrate each other and be in love and be together, and we were a family, but we could not express that in any way.
It was bizarre for them that we were single at such a late age. I'm 27 and Alice is 31, and they thought that was incredibly old. In their culture, they all get married at like 20, 22. And so they kept saying, like joking, like, oh, we have to find you an Iranian husband, which was a huge compliment. It meant that they liked us and wanted us to stick around. First, I thought it was funny, so I kept joking about how they should get Alice a husband, how she was looking for a husband, because I just was trying to make it funny. And then the more I made that joke, the more it sucked, because then they would talk about like who she could date, and I was like, ugh, this is awful. I don't want her to date anybody else. She's married to me.
We did not touch each other at all, and just, we said we were friends and roommates.
I think for the two of us together, I realized how much we feel like a family now, how hard it was to not be open together in Iran. part that never was hard for me before. And so I think it won't stop me from traveling, but in a sense, it made me love Alice more because I realized I do think of her as my family versus just, somebody that I'm dating.
Helene and Alice said goodbye to Ibrahim's family and drove 300 miles further south to Shiraz to meet their second host family. Their host mother in Shiraz identified with the most conservative values of Iranian culture. So for Helene and Alice, making a connection with her and gaining her acceptance would become a mission.
Her first host family, we were immediately super comfortable. Like, he spoke really good English, so we had no questions about miscommunication. Our second host family, amazing guy. He is a truck driver in Iran, and he's actually learned English exclusively from couchsurfing, which is just
teaching himself.
And teaching himself. He's an unbelievable guy. And so he would actually every morning, because he wanted to spend the whole day with us for English, would wake up at 4 a.m, do his truck driving route before we woke up, to then take us around all day. This really amazing guy. His wife, however, didn't speak any English, and so when we first got there, we were a little intimidated by her because she was a little bit less outgoing. We couldn't communicate with her. We didn't know how she was feeling about us. And we had made the mistake of showing her a photo that had both our parents and Alice's siblings and their partners and us, where we thought it kind of maybe had revealed that we were together. So we were like, oh crap.
So I think Helene and I both are very inclusive people and like to have people like us when we meet them initially, and I think it was really hard because we didn't think that was the case. We also thought that she suspected that we were gay, just for no reason. I think it was just in our minds as well, and she was a very religious woman, like wore a chador, and she had expressed to us later through her husband's translation that she had very conservative social values and didn't approve of our host's brother because he was like dating women and things like that, and so just very, very conservative. And so our initial reaction was that she must not like us because she thinks that we're together.
And we actually asked our hosts about that because Alice never met questions. She was afraid to ask, so she would ask them all kinds of questions in long car rides. They were very open to breaking down our assumptions about Iran. Questions like, in the US we hear that X is true in Iran, or in the US we hear that this thing is true in Iran. And the answer was always, no, that's not true. Actually, this is the way that it really is. Except for gay people. When she asked about gay people, they're like, yeah, it's execution. We were like, oh, okay. Good to know, like scoot further apart.
I mean, it's honestly a super, super safe country as long as you follow the rules.
Despite having to manage the challenge of hiding their sexuality, Alice and Helene forged on in their efforts to win the heart of their host mother.
Like, we just found a way to make a bridge via spending time with her and like trying to help her out in the kitchen in the house.
Yeah, and even not even speaking the language.
Oh no, just like sign language.
Amazing.
And playing with the kids. As intimidated as we were by that woman, we definitely made an amazing connection. And the second to last day, we were gonna go visit Persepolis. I just had complimented her on her outfit. She had this really lovely, they called it a manteau, which is like kind of like a long dress slash jacket slash house coat, like a big body covering thing, which can be very fashionable. And so I told her that hers was beautiful, and so she offered for me to wear it, which I had forgotten that in that kind of culture, like, you can't compliment somebody's like physical object, or they try to give it to you. And so I said, no. She said, yes, no, yes. So I ended up wearing it. But it was great. I remember like just kind of being in Persepolis, being like, I'm like a local. I'm like wearing like this legitimate manteau, and it works. A lot of Americans look at Iranian women and look at how covered up they are and think, God, it must be so uncomfortable to be wearing long sleeves and a long dress in the heat. Actually, no, it's made out of cotton and it's incredibly comfortable. And I actually probably felt more comfortable than Alice that day, wearing our American kind of version of that.
It was interesting for us to get to know someone who potentially would hate the way that we lived and not understand the way that we lived, but also be so warm and so generous in other aspects of their life to us. At the end of those 3 or 4 days that we were with them, they drove us to the airport really early morning. And I was it was crazy. I just felt so emotionally overwhelmed because of the kindness and generosity they had shown us. I started like tearing like profusely, and Helene was, you can share from your perspective.
Saying goodbye to us in the morning, and they're waiting by the door for us to check in. And I look over at Alice, and Alice is just crying. And I'm shocked because she doesn't really cry very often. But she was just overwhelmed with their generosity and the fact that we would never see this family again that we got so close with. And so I turn around to face our host family, and I point to Alice, and I make the motion of my hands to show that she's crying, kind of just to show them how, touched she is. And the host dad takes his wife by the shoulders and turns her around because she wasn't facing us. And below her chador, she's crying also. And it was just this amazing moment of just like how touched everybody was. It meant a lot. I think in a sense, Alice's crying probably summarized what both of us were feeling. Like I think we were very emotional after that trip. Actually, it's definitely, I think, the most striking trip either of us have taken. And I think it's because we were so wrong about that culture. And I think it's kind of an interesting thing because we do travel so much. I mean, we've been to, God, I don't know, dozens of countries and stayed with families. So in our heads, we probably have a narrative where we're pretty experienced world travelers and super open and don't have stereotypes. But even if you think you don't have stereotypes, you do. And I think, you know, even if we thought like, yeah, we're welcoming of Iranians and we don't judge that culture, you know, like at the end of the day, it's different to quote, not judge a culture than it is to like actually really feel what it's all about and understand, I think, the deeper currents that are moving there.
You have a certain impression of someone who will wear a hijab or a chador in public, especially in the States. But and then now, like our hosts both wore both hijabs and chadors, and they were just wonderful people and had like very similar to us in a lot of ways. And so now we both were like, wow, after that trip, we'll think very differently when we see somebody wearing that.
Alice and Helene caught a flight the 500 miles north from Shiraz back to Tehran and from Tehran to Boston to begin their next adventure, life as a married couple.
We didn't live together until like 3 months after we were married, which is very atypical now, but we had no problems moving in because we had traveled so much together that we knew the different nuances of what to expect when we would move in together.
It's hilarious. Living together is so easy compared to traveling together.
Yeah.
Because you know, when you're traveling together, you've got like this stress of like you're physically uncomfortable. Like you're probably not eating food that's making you feel great. It's probably too hot or too cold, or you didn't pack the right clothes.
Yeah, I mean, we've taken showers with like broken pipes in the wall, or like poured buckets of water on each other to like take a shower. Like you sleep on the ground. You know, you're eating very different food, getting sick, like all these different situations that you encounter in travel. Yeah. And so living together has just been a piece of cake because of everything else we've experienced together.
I didn't feel comfortable ending the story with the simple resolution that, despite Iran's reputation, Helene and Alice's stereotypes were overturned and they were accepted lovingly by the host families they stayed with. This narrative is true, in part, which is beautiful, but the fact remains that Helene and Alice could not fully be themselves in Iran. They couldn't be open about their relationship. So is that really acceptance? I don't know. So I asked them about it.
We assumed everybody's anti-gay because the government's anti-gay, but after we came back, our hosts wanted to be social media friends with us, and we were hesitating because we're obviously married and people know that. And our host Ibrahim found Helene on Facebook, and her profile photo is her in a white dress walking down the aisle with her father. And so he asks, you know, I saw your photo on Facebook and you're wearing a white dress. You look kind of like a bride. Are you a bride? Why are you a bride? And that's his text to...
Yeah, and so then we had kind of this moment of like 2 days of just kind of panic/sadness as we were realizing like we have to either keep lying to this man, and which is stupid, he'll figure it out, or fess up that we lied to this guy that we got so close to. You know, it's awful to have to lie to somebody that you feel really, really close to. So we ended up writing to him. And we were also, you know, nervous that if we did tell the truth, then he might not even want to be friends with us. Like, we didn't know. So we ended up writing to him and apologizing for having lied and explaining that we had to do it because of, you know, out of cultural respect, being in his home and in his country, and then safety and whatnot. But we hoped it didn't change anything, and we still wanted to be friends if he still wanted to. And then he wrote back very quickly and said, oh, actually, I understood this from the beginning. I just wanted to give you guys the space and privacy to say it on your own, essentially. You know, we're very open-minded. We don't care at all. We definitely want to be friends. And then actually since then, he's written to us and asked if he can come visit in the U.S., which is really incredible. Yeah,
so we hopefully will have the opportunity to return the favor and host them here, because they've never been able to come to the U.S.
The second host family, you know, it's funny. The fact that the first family figured it out makes me wonder, did they figure it out? They might have. And what would they think? And I think if they asked directly, we tell them, but it's definitely scary. Like, will they think differently of you based on knowing that?
This harrowing honeymoon was brought to you by EF Education First, the world leader in international education. Outbound is hosted by me, Ekwo Wedzi, produced by Meg Martineau, and sound designed by Billy Woraznik, who also occasionally plays the role of an airplane pilot. The intro music is composed by Ryan Jackson. If you like what you hear, don't forget to subscribe and also rate us on iTunes. If you want to submit your own transformative travel story, you can do so on our website, www.eftours.com/podcast, where you can also listen to all of our episodes and find out more about EF. If you have any feedback or just want to say hello to the team, you can also email us at outbound@ef.com.